Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. My name's Corey Pierce, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Churn Zero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled The Next New Normal, Maturing Your Customer Engagement Approach to Meet Modern Needs. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that we are recording this session, and a link to the recording will be available 24 hours after this webinar. Throughout the presentation, you're welcome to submit your questions via the Questions tab, and our staff will try and answer them as we go. We will also address as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Now I'm pleased to introduce to you our webinar presenter today, Jason Whitehead. Jason is the CEO of Tritons, which is a customer success and software adoption consulting firm. He is also co-founder of the Customer Success Mastermind, which is an ongoing professional growth subscription program for CS professionals. And he is a co-host of a popular CS podcast series, The Jason's Take On, which I definitely recommend checking out. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jason.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for coming in today. Really excited to talk about this topic, the next new normal. We've seen a lot of interesting and exciting and scary things happening in the business world over the last few months, and I think we're just now starting to get our heads around what some of this means, and really looking forward to sharing this with you guys. So thanks. So let's jump in here. Okay. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. The first, we really want to talk about what is this next new normal and take a couple seconds to create some context of what's changing in the world that is precipitating this shift. And what does that mean for us going forward, for our customers going forward? In general, how do we take this knowledge and do something with it? And then I want to share with you what we're calling success chain. The success chain model is a very simple, exciting visual that really helps you understand how we're all connected and how you can use this concept to more effectively engage with your customers and how they can then more effectively achieve success in their own organization using your product or service. And then we'll talk a bit about how to go about improving your customer success program by applying these success chain concepts and some things that you can do differently. And then to round it out, we want to really end by talking about what are some specific things that you can do, just a couple of techniques, obviously not the full list of them, but some things that you could start to do and start to look for applying the success chain concept to help you and your organization and your customers achieve more. So let's jump in. Okay. So searching for the new normal, I think with the current situation that we've all seen, it's not an exaggeration to say the world can really get turned upside down here with very little warning. And I think when we look back at what was happening in February and March timeframe of suddenly offices were closing, businesses were closing, people didn't know if it was going to be a day or a week or a month or a year, and we still don't really know how long it's going to be. People have realized that things can change very quickly, and the core skill that people need to have is really that ability to pivot and change the way they operate and to do it at scale and to still be effective doing this. And when you think of the subscription world that we're in today, not only do you need to be able to do this in your organization, but your customers need to be able to do this as well. So let's ask here, what happens suddenly if you face a situation where you lose 50% or more of your customers overnight, or your customers cut their budgets by over 50%, or they start laying off and furloughing folks without warning? You know, if this suddenly happens, this can really dramatically impact their business and your business. And when customers suddenly cut budgets, cut staff without a little planning, you want to make sure that you're in the front of the line for the company that they want to keep, that they view as critical and essential. So how will you be one of those suppliers that they cut, or are you going to be one that they're going to keep? Then I think the other piece here as well is, on the bright side, what happens if all of this if things are going well? What happens if everything looks great for you? You want to be, what if the majority of your customers really see all the value that they can possibly get from your product or service? What if they perceive as you helping them generate revenues or lowering their costs? What if they really perceive you guys as critical to their operations? And suddenly you are the last person they're going to cut and the first person they're going to rely on all the way through. So there is some upside potential to all of this as well too. And when we look at all this and when we think about what this really means is that more than ever, suppliers and customers are linked. And you need to make sure that you realize that your success is based on their success. And so coming into this, you need to have that both a growth and a survival mindset. And I think for a few months now, everyone's been in survival mode, but we're going to get back to growth mode. But we can never really lose having that mutual mindset. And as we look at this, and as we look at how connected we all are and how linked we all are, I think it's important to recognize that the way we engage each other has changed. And the way that we work together as suppliers and customers, the lines are getting blurred there. And we need to think through what that really means here. So with that as a backdrop, I think we're seeing a lot of transitions in the world, and I don't think people fully gotten their hands around it. But I think that what is clear is that we need to change now, both to continue to get through this current situation, but also to make sure that we come out ahead and that we're poised to go forward in the future. And I would say that what has worked before from a customer success perspective doesn't really work now, or at least maybe it never really did. And you really don't have the luxury of time and hope and to get through all these things. You've really got to make some big changes now to really figure out how it is that we're going to keep acquiring customers and surviving and thriving going forward. So there's a lot of things to think about here. So with the shift, I want to talk a little bit about success chains and how we can use this concept to drive success and to adjust how we work with customers as well. So there's a simple visual that I'm going to share with everyone that I think will be really helpful. And we found every time we share this visual, people really say, wow, that's great, and I can't wait to share it with my customers. And the idea is to help demonstrate to customers and even internally this mutually dependent relationship between vendors and customers, and between suppliers here and their customers. And it's really, we encourage you to share this visual and help everyone going forward to focus on the right things and to make sure people are really aware what's going on. And the idea here is also to help the customer shift to focus on driving their own adoption and success, but also to help drive your success. And we'll talk about that in a bit more. So let's jump in. When you look at this simple visual right here, it's a pretty simple relationship here. You sell a product to your customer, and then they will use it to achieve an outcome. And the customer really needs to achieve and perceive the success. And only if your customer is successful will you be successful as well, because you don't just want one sale, you want an initial sale. So think of each sales cycle with a customer is this link between mutual success. If you do a good job selling, they get a great product, get great value, and if they get the outcomes they want, then they will buy more, and you can have a renewal sale and expansion sale. But there are some things that need to happen in between, and this is where this usually breaks down. And this is the idea that customers, really do need to struggle, or they really need to drive adoption of the product that you sold them. So you sell the product, then they actually have to get it not just live, but they have to get people to use it, and they have to get people to use it in a way that's creating the value and outcomes that they want. And only when they get the outcomes they want will they give you the feedback and references that you need to continue to grow. And I think it's important here when you talk with customers and to recognize that customers want and need a strong supplier. It's expensive for customers to go and change suppliers and to change vendors. It takes a lot of time. It's very disruptive. Most customers would like to find a great supplier and a great product that can really stick with them and grow with their business. Also, I've worked with a lot of organizations that are doing very complex RFP processes. And one of the things that they really look for is how stable is this supplier? How financially viable are they? Will they continue to grow? Do they have the resources to evolve the product so that we don't have to go through this for another 5 or 10 years and that we can have confidence that they're going to be there? So there's a lot of reasons here that your customers need you to be successful, okay? When we look at how this all plays out, I want you to think of each of these success links as one iteration of a sales cycle. So you make the first sale, the customer gets the outcome that they want. Only if you do a good job helping your customers get tremendous value and outcome will you get the renewal and expansion sale. If they're not getting the value, you're not getting that expansion sale. And then the next iteration, they're going to look back and say, did we get the outcome this year that we wanted from the customer? And so on and so forth. You've probably seen too that many times if your customers are not getting the value and they don't perceive that value, they're not going to renew, or they're going to cut down the renewal all the way through. So that really does struggle. And when you put it all together, these multiple iterations, you can see they do form a chain of we've bought a product, we've gotten value, so we buy more, we get the value, we buy more, and we get the value. And your goal as a supplier is to help strengthen this chain and to make it as long as possible. And frankly, your customers should want the same things as well too. And on top of this as well too, obviously there are all those cycles of every single loop or link in this chain. They have to get the user adoption that they need. They have to get that value that they want to have. And then they have to give you feedback and references. And there's a couple important points in there. As a customer, they should be giving you feedback both on how to evolve the product and what works, and also what are their future needs so that you can continue to develop your product to meet their evolving and ongoing needs. And the other piece is that they should be prepared to give you references, social proof, testimonials to help you win other sales. They should be willing to say, the more that my supplier can win more sales and the faster that they can grow their capabilities and their resources, the better able they are to provide the product and services that we need to continue to be successful. So they should be very happy to do that. And I think it's important when you look at this simple concept of the success chain to really say, are we engaging our customers right up front with the idea that this is a mutually successful relationship? Are we working with them in a way that they have an expectation and they're committed to our success as much as their own success? Are they willing to provide the feedback and references? Are they willing to do the things they need to do to drive user adoption and achieve success with our product or service in their organization? And if you haven't had these direct conversations with your customer, you need to start having those, and you need to start thinking about this. And I'd also just like to remind everyone too, as we're thinking about this, in any given relationship, you could be the supplier or you could be the customer. Every vendor out there that sells on a subscription basis also buys tools, products, services, software from other folks. And this applies to you as well. So when you are the customer, you should be prepared to give feedback and references. You should be working closely with your suppliers to help engage in a way that they actually are making you successful in driving adoption. So it really is an important thing. And then finally, to complete this image of the success chain, what happens if your customer does not get the value that they expect? What happens if they don't get the outcomes that they want? Well, then you're gonna have a broken chain. And a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, as we all know. So if they're not getting the value, they're not renewing, they're not expanding. So think about that as well. So let's just sort of to recap the success chain concept. It really is pretty simple, but just to make it a little bit clearer, the suppliers provide a great product and it's going to solve your customer's problem. You're going to help them achieve value and success that they cannot achieve on their own without your product or services. And then the customers actually have to use the product and service to achieve the outcomes they want. And customers should remain loyal and buy more. And I think the relationship needs to really evolve to a point of, as long as you are creating more value for our organization than we can create on our own, faster and cheaper than we can do by ourselves, we should remain loyal to you because it's in the best interest of everyone. Then obviously customers need to engage closely with their supplier, provide the feedback, provide insights about their evolving future needs, so that the supplier can continue to provide and build and deliver and support great products that help the customer achieve more than they can on their own. And as part of this relationship, as part of this mutual success model, it's in the customer's best interest to provide outstanding references and social proof that helps their supplier win new sales from other organizations. If you're doing great things, your customers should be very happy to go out and advocate for you. So that's the simple concept that we have about a success chain and what it is. It's a very simple visual. I think we can all get our heads around this, but we can use this in many different ways. And you can use it internally as well with your internal organizations to say, hey, you know, are our internal alignments, our sales and support and customer success, are we all aligned that everything we're doing is helping to build these success chains with our customers? Or do we have some sort of internal conflicts that are preventing that from happening? But I think the bigger focus here is how do we use this concept of a success chain to improve our customer success program? And what does that look like? So let me just throw out here something to think about. Why is it that some customers are wildly successful using your software and technology and others are not? You know, and recognize that your product or service is the same, but the people that are using it are different, and the people in the different customer organizations are different. So the challenge is not a technical issue, and we're not just a technical issue, to be clear, but it's a human, it's a people issue, it's an organizational issue. And this is where things usually break down for most organizations in achieving success. And this is where you need to adjust your CS programs to really focus on how do we engage our customers differently, and how do they engage their internal people differently to really drive adoption and success using our product and service in their organization. So let's start there. Where is your success chain breaking? Is it breaking in your customer's organization or in your organization? Is it that you're not delivering that great product or service? Is it that you're not really enhancing your customer, or that the tool just doesn't work? Or more likely, is it that you've got a great tool, you've got a great product, and your customer believes this when they bought it, but then when they get it in their organization, they're not really taking the steps necessary to drive that success in their own organization. So it's important to understand, well, why aren't they? And what changes in capacity does your customer need to achieve in their organization? You know, I work with a lot of both customer success teams and with a lot of buyers of software, driving internal adoption, internal change management programs. And consistently what I hear is that we don't know how to drive change and to get people to use technology effectively in our organization. And buyers constantly tell us that. And they really don't have the skills, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the approaches in there. And if you leave it up to them to do it on their own, they're just not going to do that. And in the old days, especially with you know, on-premise software that was purchased once, you know, and without a subscription, it really was the customer's problem. But now it's your problem, because if they don't get value, if they don't drive success, you're going to struggle to achieve success. So the question becomes, if they don't have the capacity that they need in their organization, what do we need to do differently externally to help them get it? How do we build that capacity for our customers? And how do we engage them differently to ensure that they're successful, so that ultimately we're successful as well too? A couple things to think about here, and this is really important. While you may recognize that change and adoption is going to be the big struggle for most of your clients, it really is something that only they can do in their organization. You can help them, you can build their capacity, you can focus their efforts on the need to do this, and you can support them in that efforts, but it is activities and it is effort required by your customers. Now, on the other side of this, the better your customer is able to drive a change on their own, the less support they're going to need for you. So as you think about this, if you win new customers, and you know, we hear all the time, how do I scale my CS program? What tools do we use? What tech touch do we do? Because we can't just keep adding headcount every time we get a new bunch of customers. But suddenly, if we suddenly had our customers learning up front how to drive their own success, that will reduce the need for us to do that. It will reduce the workload on our team. So how do we focus on getting them to be self-sufficient and to be able to scale their own organization? And then how do we pivot our approach to make this happen? So here's some things to think about when you're thinking about how to do that. Before we get too focused on typical customer success activities like metrics and buyer's journeys and playbooks and things like that, you need to really start to understand what it takes to achieve success from the customer's perspective. You know, as I've said many times before, until you know what it takes to achieve success from your customer's perspective, you'll only waste a lot of time and effort and money on doing things that don't work. So really put yourself in their shoes first. What are the challenges in their organization? Where do they struggle to get value? Where do they struggle to get people to embrace technology effectively as intended and as designed? And then what is it that why haven't they been able to achieve success in the past? Why haven't they been able to achieve success with similar systems or any system if that's the case? And then once you start to look at those big questions and don't make it specific to your tool or product or service, work backwards from there to figure out how you can help them achieve more on their own. And ask yourself, and even ask directly to the customer, what will be different this time? How are you going to achieve success? And only then, once you've taken the perspective of what does it take for the customer to achieve success, can we do to help grow our own success? And you know, if you think back to that success links and success chains, the customer success will always come before the supplier success. So if they cannot be successful, you will not be successful. So it is in your own best interest to figure out how to make this happen. Okay, so let's jump in a little bit here more and talk about what are some ways you can engage your customer differently around some of these techniques. And there's some steps I want to talk about to help customers adapt and adopt and accelerate success. So I think the first one is really review this concept of a success chain during the sales process. And if you can't do it during the sales process, you want to do it as quickly up front as you can in the onboarding phase. And you want them to focus on the idea that this is a mutual success and that you have to do things differently to help them achieve success, and that they need to also do things to help drive your success, because otherwise their success will be very short-lived. And just have a nice discussion around that. When I train a lot of customer success teams, inevitably it comes up that the CSMs are uncomfortable having conversations with customers about renewals. They're uncomfortable having conversations about expansions. They're uncomfortable leading their customers through these ideas. We spend a lot of time during these training courses trying to set them up with a vision for how do you establish the relationship right up front, to be very clear that we want to have a relationship for 20 years or more. And we know for that to happen, you've got to get so much value that you're going to want to continue to work with us. So let's talk about the process by which we achieve that success for you. And also let's talk about what we need from you to enable us to be successful and to enable us to continue to deliver that long-term success to you. And when you set the foundation the right way, it makes it so much easier downstream to be able to get the outcomes that you want and to make your customers successful. So step one, right up front, explain the simple process with success chain concept with your customers and get them to really focus their efforts on how are they going to drive adoption in their organization. Get them to recognize that unless they have the capacity and take the actions necessary to drive change and adoption, they're not going to get the outcomes that they need. And get them to recognize that that's work that they need to do internally, and it doesn't matter if they're buying your system or competitors or anyone else's, that is an organizational issue, it's a people issue, it's not a technology specific issue. But then also get them to recognize that you can and you will help. So once you start to go through these issues, and then obviously getting the customer to acknowledge that, yes, they do want to provide feedback and resources for you because it's in everyone's interest, you've really got a conversation for mutual success. And then I think you can figure out how you can incorporate these concepts into ongoing relationships, QBRs, EBRs of a mutual success review. So step two then is to get the customers to set up and manage their own internal success team in their program. If you have a customer success team, your customers should have their own internal success team of how they're going to get value and adoption with your product or service in their organization. And get customers to realize that adoption doesn't just happen organically. It requires activity, and especially the larger their organization, the more complex their organization is, especially now when we're seeing so much remote work where people are not in the offices and you can't casually have conversations around things. It takes a very important effort to make change and adoption happen. And get them to recognize that this is a critical path for them. As you're having these discussions, it's really important to go and say, how do we identify the customer's experience, ability, and capacity to drive this adoption in their own organization? And if it's missing, how can we help them build that? And I think what you're going to find is that for many of your customers, it is missing. And as you're talking about this with your customer, recognize that this is a workload for them, an effort that they probably haven't thought about. So you need to get their commitments to really running their adoption efforts and program and doing the activities necessary for them to get value. Because if they don't get value, you won't get value, and this is a mutual success relationship. So here's some specific things that I think can really help, and I wanted to share some of these with you. Here's questions we often recommend. Asking your customer, what is the typical user adoption rate for any product they purchase or the typical software they purchase? It doesn't have to be the same. If a customer doesn't have the ability to get value with any of their other software, why would it be different when what they purchased from you? Some other related questions, what percentage of your applications are being used to their full potential? And I think you'll be very surprised by that. They'll probably say something around none to 15% or 45%, maybe. And then the next question that we often ask is, how much value do you think you're actually getting from your typical software purchase? And I've had multiple CEOs say, we're really only using about 10% of the application. We know we could get so much more out of it. We don't, or we haven't, and we don't know what to do about it. And I think you'll be surprised when you start to ask your customers how much value they're getting from most of their software. The numbers are shockingly low. And then I think the next one here is on a scale of 1 to 10, what is their ability to drive change and adoption capacity of any new technology, not just yours specifically? Asking these questions will give you a pretty good indication of how much capacity your customer has. And if you come back after asking these questions and you feel a little bit scared about their ability to be successful, trust your gut, because it's going to be a scary process unless you or they do something different to help fill these gaps. Another key issue that's typically missed, and I think this is really important to go over with your customers, is determine if they really have the right person owning their internal success. Ask them who in your organization is going to be accountable for making sure that 3, 5, and 10 years down the road, that people in your organization are using this product, using it to its full potential, and that you're getting the full value you can from it. Most organizations, they will have someone whose job it is to get a system live and out the door and on time and on budget, but they don't actually have someone whose job it is to make sure that it's delivering value to them, and that's going to make sure that it stays relevant and that people are using it effectively in their organization. And without someone there who not only has the authority and the experiences and the resources to do this, it's probably not going to happen. And the amount of value they get will be much less than what they need. And obviously, coming back to the success chain, if they're not getting the value they need, they're not going to be renewing with you for very, very long. As you're thinking about your program, as you're thinking about what it would take for your customers to be successful, look across all of your customers and identify what are the steps that our most successful customers do. What resources do they have, or expertise or capacity they have in their organization? Where is it that we can help supplement that? And then use this as a baseline to try and figure out what are the things that all of your customers should have? What are the tools and resources and methods and capacity that you can deliver to all of your customers to make them more successful? And then another simple but very important thing is asking your customer and helping them build a realistic plan that's going to help them drive that long-term success. And one of the simple exercises that I will do with clients all the time, they find it very, very impactful and eye-opening, is asking quite simply, if you had to build a program plan for how you manage change, drive user adoption, and drive success for the next 3 to 5 years after go live, could you confidently do this? And I stress the word confidently. And ask them, what activities and milestones would you include in it? What resources will you need? Whose job is it to make all of this happen? And what you'll probably find is that most people, they don't even know where to begin. So they're probably really good at coming up with a project plan to get a system live. They're probably pretty good at coming up with a project plan for how they're going to do initial training, initial communications, initial rollout. But if you came to them and said, yeah, once all that work is done, what does it take to go forward from there? They're probably going to struggle a lot. And that is a sign that you need to build their capacity. And if you don't have the expertise in-house, which many of you may not, you need to build your own capacity as well. And that really leads to step 3, which is focusing your customers' success efforts on building capacity for both internal adoption and success program. And one of the strongest things you can do is really take that teach a man to fish approach to customer success. Figure out how it is that you can help your customers learn how to do this work on their own and be able to do it 3, 5, and 10 years down the road. Now, if you wanted to have a customer for 10, 20 years, if you spent the first 2 years building their capacity and teaching them how to drive success, teaching them how to drive adoption, then for the remainder of that relationship over the next 8 years or 18 years or whatever it's going to be, you focus more than on just helping them to incrementally improve as the product improves, incrementally change, but the skills that they will need to drive ongoing adoption as new releases come out, as new functionality come out, that will be huge. And that will allow them to do the work that your team does not have to do. So then how do you build that capacity? Well, you will need to figure out what are the training and resources and tools and expertise and change and adoption and achieving success with technology your customer needs but doesn't have. And then you need to figure out how you're going to provide that to them and how you're going to build this capacity. So if you have it in-house, if you have in-house experts in change management and user adoption and driving successful use of technology and getting business value from it, great, you're in a good position to go. If you don't have that in-house, you're going to need to figure out how to build those capabilities yourself so that you can teach your customers and build their success, or you're going to have to find some way to acquire that. And then as you're going through this and as you're looking at what you're going to do, I want to come back to this concept of your customer needs to both achieve success and perceive the outcomes and perceive the success to make it happen. And your efforts need to be focused both on helping them achieve it and then helping them perceive just how much value that they've received. Okay, so those are the concepts here that we wanted to go over. It's kind of a lot to go through, and I went through it relatively quickly. I wanted to give the chance to let people ask some questions, but I did want to let you know this concept of success chain is a new service offering that Tritons and our business partners will be launching this fall. It's going to be an exciting supplier growth program where both the supplier and the customers participate. And the program is designed to help build capacity for both parties around change management, user adoption, and mutual success. And this program that will be coming, it's a plugin for transformation and success program. So it can help your customers as they drive their adoption, and it can help customer success teams as well build their capacity and their ability to drive success within their organization. And it's an ongoing program to help ensure success year after year. So we'll be telling more about that coming up in just a couple months. We're really excited about it. And as we said, it is a service plugin for transformation, and it's going to be focused on one-to-many virtual delivery. And we're really viewing it as an add-on for low, medium, and high-touch organizations and customer success pieces. And the idea is that it will it'd be a program that, as a supplier, you can share and provide to your customers to help them build their own capacity and help grow their own success as part of your customer success strategy. So look forward to sharing more information about that. And if you'd like to learn more information about the program as it comes out, please just drop me an email at info@tritons.com, and we'll keep you updated as things launch. So that's the information I wanted to go over today. And with that, we'll open up if anyone has any questions or comments. I'm happy to discuss anything in detail.
Great, thank you so much for that presentation, Jason. At this time, I'd like to again ask the audience to please go ahead and submit your questions, and we will get to as many as we can during this time. But actually, real quickly, before we jump into the Q&A, I'd like to invite each of you to our virtual customer success conference that we are having, and it's taking place on October 8th. It's a free half-day event, and we have a fantastic speaker lineup. So I encourage you to head to our website at churnzero.net to check out the event and to register. Okay, so let's jump into Q&A, and we had some questions already come in, and our first question is, how do you get around customers who often remove the ability to reference them during the sales process? Any tips to get them to not do so?
Yeah, I've seen that come up quite a few times, and sometimes they have strategic reasons for doing that. Other times I've seen it as more of a finance and negotiation ploy. I would make it a negotiation piece and just say, look, we're committed to mutual success, and this is very important for us to be able to get the value that we need from this, and let's talk about how we make it successful for both of us. And even ask them, what is the concern behind wanting us to keep this private? Is there something that we need to understand here? And they may have legitimate reasons for doing that. But I think it's also something that if it's in many contracts I've seen, it does have you cannot reference us without mutual previous written approval. Go and ask for the approval and let them know, okay, we're okay with you not referencing us right now, but at those QBRs and that renewal, that's where we want to come back and say, okay, we've delivered some great value for you. We need you to help us with that as well too. Some customers just won't do it, and that is okay. But I think setting that expectation up front that we are going to come and ask for references, we are going to come and ask for testimonials, for social proof, and it's in your best interest to do so as well, because it helps us grow to better serve you. That makes it a little bit easier.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So our next question is, with the list of questions that you went over to assess a current customer's capacity, when do you recommend asking those questions? Is it during the sales cycle or during onboarding?
Both. And I think there's a couple of different ways that you can handle it. One is if you're asking it during the sales cycle, it's a nice opportunity for the salesperson to ask some of those questions to get a sense of, okay, you have some challenges here getting value. Let us tell you how our customer success team is going to work with you during the onboarding process and beyond to help make you successful, and use that as a differentiator for the power of your customer success team to help you win and close sales. Highlight the challenges they will have and say, look, these are typical issues that will impact any vendor that you might go with. So if you go with one of our competitors, you're still going to have to address these issues. The question becomes, will your vendor help you do it in a way that's better than we can? And chances are no. Here are the things that our customer success team does to make you successful and to work with you to overcome these challenges. And it's a tremendous value and tremendous asset and this approach gets us there faster. So I think that can go a long way there, but it can also allow them to get a sense of how much effort is going to be required to really make this customer successful and service them. What does that need to look like? But I also think it's important to recognize that some sales folks may not adequately explain that, but then also the people, once the sale is completed, that actually internally on your customer side are responsible for getting the system live, getting adoption done. They're probably different people than the ones who made the buying decision, and they need to have these discussions as well too. So you will need to repeat them with the other stakeholders as well. So if it wasn't covered during sales, you definitely need to do it as early in the onboarding process as possible. And even if it was during sales, if you have different people involved, you'll need to repeat those conversations and use it to really highlight the idea of, for you to be successful, you need to drive adoption, and here's how we're going to help get you there. What have you done before? Do you recognize you have a problem? And then as you're asking these questions, your customer should start to feel a little bit uncomfortable. They should start to get a little bit scared, and you can use that to help drive them to take the actions you need them to take. Use that to help them realize that they need to build their capacity to drive change and adoption, and here are some tools and resources to help with that. Use that to say, here's why we need to meet frequently and why I'm going to be asking you to do the activities that I ask you to do, because if you don't do these, history has shown that you will not achieve success. So I think you can do it in both places and towards different ends.
Great. I think those are a lot of good points. Another question that came in that's somewhat related. So if the questions are being asked on the customer success side, is it best for that to come from the customer success manager or someone higher up?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
So if the questions that you're asking the customer, if that is happening when that happens on the customer success side, is that best to come from the CSM or someone higher up?
I like it from the CSM. Someone higher up can ask them as well too, but I think it's very helpful if the CSM asks them. And part of the reason I say that is, when we're working with customer success teams and training them and helping build their competence and capacity, we try to set them up so that the customer perceives the CSM as an expert in helping the customer get business value from the tool and the product. We don't want to have them be perceived as a technical resource. We don't want them to be perceived as an admin resource. We want them to be established as almost like a business consultant for the customer. And if you're the one asking those questions and you can have those conversations confidently and intelligently with your customer, that goes a long way to the customer really valuing what you bring and valuing you as a resource and wanting to make more time for you as a CSM. So I think that's very important.
Got it. Okay, our next question is, how do you change the mindset of a current customer who doesn't have the time or doesn't see the value in setting up a strategic partnership, particularly with low-touch customers?
Yeah, and I think that does happen quite a bit. Not every customer is going to want to have a strategic relationship, and there's just no way around that. Some of them will, some of them, and some of them rightly so will benefit greatly from that. I think what you can do though is really highlight for them the value that they get by working with you differently than they have in the past, or from working with you differently than they have other vendors in the past, and showing them how they benefit more if they do this, and show them the risks if they don't. One of the questions that I'll often ask people is when would you like to fail? Do you want to fail right up front because you haven't, you haven't done the things that you need to do to achieve success, and you waste a lot of time and effort and money trying to get there? Or do you want to do the right things and have tremendous success? It's really up to you. And some people, they don't have the time, or they have bigger priorities that they're just using your tool for very small things, and that's okay. Recognize that as best you can. But for the rest, again, the idea comes back into build the capacity. Similarly, one of the things I think is an important selling point is that when you're trying to engage someone in the success chain concept, and when you're trying to build their capacity to drive change and drive adoption, that is a transferable skill set and knowledge base that they can use across future jobs that they might have, but also across any future application they might acquire. So the skills and techniques that you use to drive adoption and change of one software can help them with getting increased success with all their other softwares as well too. And if you help build their capacity that they can take to the rest of the organization, that's a tremendous value for them. And if you can do that more than any other vendor that's out there, they should have a very special relationship and view towards the value that you bring. So just a couple of things to think about there.
Got it. The next question that we have that came in is, how do you motivate a client who is not proactive about the adoption of your product?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on what you mean by the client and the individual. So what I have often found is if during the sales process and with the executives, you set the expectation of, okay, we want to have a long-term relationship with you and we want to make sure that you get as much value as you can. And that's why you're even talking to us right now. Let's talk about what it takes to get there and highlight for them that adoption is a critical path to their success. And that if they don't take the actions necessary, they're not going to, one, achieve the full value they can with your product and service, but two, they probably won't solve the underlying business problem that's making them want to buy your product or service in the first place. So it is sort of a double piece there. I think the other piece then, if you show them even taking small steps will give you a bump in success and a bump in value. Start small, see some increased value that you wouldn't otherwise see, and then let's come back after you've seen some success and we'll talk about how we get you even more. And at that point, asking them to commit to do more of the things that they need to do is a great way to go. So it's not always easy to motivate them, but I think there's also, if you're looking at the individual level within an organization, and this is sort of shifting focus a bit. So you've got how does the organization get motivated, but then the individuals, that's usually a major problem that most organizations have, is that they haven't aligned incentives and rewards with the use of the technology and the use of the software. And if there's some sort of conflict there, people will not work against their own self-interest for long. So highlighting to your customers, part of their adoption effort, they need to figure out why are people not motivated and what can they change internally to get their teams, to get their managers, get their end users to use the system, and help guide them on the steps to do that.
Thank you. That's a great answer. We have a question that came in that says, how regularly should you ask for customer feedback to make this success chain model work? Is it is it casual inquiries or more formal surveys?
I think it's all of the above. I encourage people to get some version of feedback, even if it's small, in every single interaction. But I think you do need to formalize it at distinct points. So business reviews are a great point to get some of those feedback and those ideas. What's working, what's not, where have we gone? Also, you can share feedback to them as well too. I think that as part of renewal discussions, you should have some serious feedback discussions around how is your business evolving and growing? What do we need to be changing or putting on our horizon for evolving our product to help meet your needs? Setting the expectation, we want to make sure that 2 years from now that you're still having great success. Let's talk about what you think that will look like now, so that we can figure out how we can best get you there, and that you're going to be excited when we get there. So, the more that you have that close dialogue, you'll pick up some nuggets and gems through casual conversation, but put it on a business review, put it as part of a renewal discussion, see where it needs to go. And then also, if there are times when you say, hey, this is also that reference time, what can we do to get a video testimonial from you? What can we do to get a quote for the website? What else can we do to have you help us build this? Let's get a case study, let's do a white paper, something. Those are other efforts that I think you should pursue with them, especially when they are at the height of being satisfied and getting full value with your product or service.
Awesome. I think those are all great tips on surfacing information from your customers. We have a question that came in that says, what approach can you take when you get a cancellation notice and you want to save the customer? What can the CSM do to help save them?
Wow. That comes up a lot too. And I think many times, if you were surprised that this is coming, that's very telling in its own right. There should not be any surprises. You should have a sense of when your customers are not getting value or likely churn risks. And there may very well be nothing that you can do for those. But you can contact them to figure out why is it that they are canceling, renewing, where did they stop getting value? Was it a change in their organization? Sometimes, for example, if a customer just did an acquisition and the company that was acquired brought in a different tool set that they decided to standardize on that made your tool set redundant. you're not going to save that customer. But if there was something else, maybe you could take some actions, but it can be very hard. I think instead, though, by focusing on mutual success all the way through, you should have these ongoing discussions with the customers about, are they getting the value that they need? One question that we teach people to ask is, it's uncomfortable for a lot of folks at first, but setting the expectation to begin with is that at the end of every single client interaction, whether it's a meeting, a phone call, a support ticket, a QBR, whatever it may be, asking the very simple question of, if you had to renew today, would you? Have you gotten enough value over your entire relationship with our organization, not from our product, but your relationship with our organization, that if you had to renew today, would you? And a very simple yes or no. And I think most times people would say, we're kind of disappointed in this, or it took longer to fix that, or we wish this was on your roadmap and it's not, but yes, overall, we would still renew. That's a good indication. If they say probably not, then you've got to figure out what you can do to save them. But simply by having them tell you that up front, it should remove any of the surprise around a cancellation, and then hopefully you still have time to rectify that situation.
Those are some great tips. We have a question that came in that says, what can you do as a CSM if your point of contact is very junior because management of the software has been delegated downwards?
Mm-hmm.
Any tips there to help drive team adoption?
Mm-hmm. So I think there are a few different things in that one. One is during the sales process and onboarding process, whoever's making that buying decision, whoever has that authority, if you have done a sufficient job of discussing the need for adoption and change and some of the tactics around that, and having the executives understand that they have a role to drive that in their organization, is pretty key. And if you can point out to them that if you don't have the executive taking the appropriate actions, they will never be successful with this or any other software in there. Now, the reality is that many times that executives do need to delegate down a lot of the day-to-day work to more junior people or to people who can focus on this task. So I think there are a few things there. One is making sure that you're building up that individual's capacity to understand what needs to happen, and that they are able to build the relationships internally with other managers and supervisors as necessary, and build a coalition to want to support you. And the other piece, though, I've seen is sometimes that junior person is in fact a blocker. And if that is the case, what you need to make sure is, as part of the initial sales relationship and onboarding relationship, when you do have the ear of the executive, even if it's for a minute, that you set the expectations that you will be doing status reporting and some sort of business review that will require their attention, whether it's you send them a report once or twice a quarter, or you meet with them every 6 months, or whatever it may be. But they also know that you will be using them as an escalation point, so that if the people they delegate this down to are preventing issues or preventing things from working or not taking the steps necessary, you have a way to highlight this for the executive and to do it in a time frame in which the executive can take corrective action. Because the executive is making a big investment here, and the executive is putting a little bit of their reputation on the line, that they can't delegate that, and that you want to make sure that you just have that second channel there in which to go and work closer with the executive as you need to.
Awesome. We have a question that was asking if you could define mutual success for the customer. So I think, in other words, when you're talking to the customer, what are you asking for them to be successful on the supplier side?
Okay. Yeah, and I think a couple of things is, one, setting the expectation with them right up front that we would love to have you as a customer for 3, 5, 10, 20 years down the road or longer, and that we want to work very hard to make sure that you want to continue working with us and that you want to get the value, but we can't do it alone. And for us to get the sales and renewals that we need, we're going to need your time and effort, and we're going to need for you to do the things that it takes internally to get steps there. So I think that's one thing. I think you should just tell them flat out and say, look, as part of this, what it does mean is we're going to have discussions on a fairly regular basis about renewals and expansions. And my goal will be that as you achieve and perceive value, that you will engage me in discussions confidently and comfortably, saying, how can we make sure that there's still more value to be had here in other parts of your organization, or by using other modules or other tools, that you will explore those possibilities with me with the intent of really seeing if there is more value. Because Because I think this is a situation where, as a supplier, you are fighting for the timeshare and wallet share from your customer. They have only so much time for all their suppliers and only so much money to spend, that by rights, they should be focusing on whatever supplier is delivering the most value to them and that they're seeing. And setting that expectation to say, we're going to deliver more value than your other suppliers. We're going to want you to prioritize us for expansion and renewals. And let's talk about all the stuff we can do to make that happen. So I think those are some things. And I would be very clear with them as well of, at what point do we want to engage in these discussions? At what point is it, or what will it take for you to be comfortable giving us references and quotes that we can use in social proof to continue to grow our organization, and helping them get in the mindset that the more they can help you grow and be successful, the better it is for them. I think so those are all some things that you can do around the mutual success piece.
Great, thank you for that clarification. We have a question that came in, and they're asking if your champion left and there's no longer that knowledge of the platform, how do you go about re-engaging them again to show value in the product?
A couple things. Well, I think also that reminds me of another point. As part of a mutual success discussion, you should talk through with your customer how they will handle transitions of staff members, yours and theirs. And if the champion leaves, what is their commitment to you to help continue to make you successful having that relationship with that organization? Will they provide a backup contact in case they're not available or they leave? Will they do an introduction and a warm handover to whoever will be responsible after they leave? What does that need to look like? And setting those expectations right up front that this is bigger than any one relationship, I think is pretty important. I think the next part then is trying to figure out if that someone has left and you're not in that situation to set up the right way. Figuring out what contacts you have that are most supportive and most influential in your organization, or if that's not the case, who will get on the phone with you, who will have a conversation with you and explain to them, look, we're trying to find the right people to do this. You've been a loyal customer. We want to figure out how we can continue to make you guys successful and us successful as well too. And we've got a lot of resources to bring, but we don't have is the right people to talk to in your organization. Who can you connect us with that would be interested in this? And if possible, who's making the budget decision around the renewal, and how can I get in touch with that person so that they're confident that they're spending money on something that's adding a lot of value to your organization. And sometimes it's hard, but one of the things that we work with clients is how do we make sure during the onboarding process we always have additional contacts? How do we set the expectation for handling staff transitions? How do we make sure we're tracking that information and keeping everyone in the loop so that the perceived value that we are bringing is ubiquitous in our customers' organization?
Awesome. Well, this time it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. So I just wanted to remind you again that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar tomorrow. And at the end of this webcast, you'll see a survey pop up, and we'd appreciate it if you would just take a minute before logging off to complete the survey so we can get your feedback on our webinar program. So thank you so much, Jason, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Bye, everyone.